Welcome to Coffee and Conversation. My name is Honorine, and today I'm with Amy Liberman, who is pursuing a PhD in clinical psychology. Amy, welcome, and thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much.
My first question for you is, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Amy. I am a second year in the clinical psychology PhD program now, and I'm a member of Thomas Joyner's lab for the study of prevention and behaviors in suicide and suicide-related conditions and behaviors. So we investigate suicide from a range of different perspectives, really just looking for some of the commonalities behind people who either have suicidal thoughts and how to prevent those, or who act on their thoughts and behaviors.
What did you do before starting your PhD?
Yeah, so I completed my undergrad at Northwestern University right outside Chicago. And I studied psych and psych services for 4 years there. I loved it. And then I spent a couple of years up in Bethesda, so right near DC at the National Institute of Mental Health. And I was conducting research there in a schizophrenia lab. So specifically, I looked at cognitive deficits and cognitive impairment in adults with schizophrenia.
Okay. And where does this interest in this aspect of psychology and mental health come from?
Yeah, so I, in my undergrad as a psych major, I took an abnormal psych class with this professor, Vijay Mittal, who just spoke about schizophrenia as if it were the coolest thing in the world, which is horrible in one case because it's not, but just his passion, and he exuded this just interest that was contagious. And so I went to his office hours literally just to chat with him and to hear more about what guided him, with no sort of motive, just interested. And we ended up talking, and he asked if I wanted to be a research assistant in his lab, and I had no idea what research even entailed at that point. I was like, sure. So I joined his lab just out of chance, and again, fell in love with that population, that interest, and ended up writing an honors thesis as an undergrad in schizophrenia under Vijay's supervision. And then he encouraged me to take a couple years to do some research and really hone my interest before applying to graduate school. So that was what sort of led me to look for more opportunities in schizophrenia. And that's what guided me to NIH, which was then where I started really seeing the comorbidity of suicide and severe mental illness. And so then really got interested in suicide, and that's where I am now.
Oh, it's fascinating.
I know.
And so earlier when I complimented you on your background, you said that's what my clients see. What do you mean by my clients?
Yeah. So what's so cool about a lot of clinical psych PhD programs, but especially the Florida State program, is we wear a lot of different hats. So we're students, we're full-time students, we're full-time researchers, and we are full-time therapists. So they basically say, swim, fishies, swim. They throw us into the community clinic that's hosted at Florida State, and we're under great supervision, don't get me wrong. But we have our own clients, so we each get a full caseload of clients. And what I really, really appreciate about the Florida State Clinic is we don't just see, all therapy is valid, but we don't see, kind of the typical stressed college student or sort of, subclinical levels that maybe other training clinics offer their trainees. We use entirely empirically supported treatments for empirically, validated severe instances of psychopathology. So we're seeing as long as they're medicated, psychotic disorders, eating disorders, drug abuse, generalized anxiety, and also specific sorts of panic, major depression, really all of these really interesting cases of psychopathology while we're also under supervision. So it's a great opportunity.
So when you said under supervision, it means that the professor, or I guess the psychologist, I don't know how to call that, supervisor, is with you in the room when you're with your clients?
Good question. So no, we are under the supervision of licensed clinical psychologists who work at the clinic. So my PhD advisor is different from my clinical advisor or clinical supervisor. And each semester we switch supervisors, but we will be in the clinic or in the room by ourselves as the training therapist with the client. And then there are recordings in the room. And then also if we do a virtual because of COVID, we record on Zoom. And then our supervisor is able to pull the tape and watch it. And then we meet weekly in a supervision group with 3 other students. So there's usually 4 training therapists per supervisor group. And we have a sort of a 2-hour block each week where we discuss our cases and we can help each other, and we get input from the other training therapists as well as our kind of shared supervisor.
Does it mean that you like only take care or maybe focus more on the students who are experiencing suicidal thoughts, since that's your research, or you actually, see everybody so that you get your training, like a full training?
You ask such good questions. So I definitely, and the person who assigns the clients to the therapist will ask sort of whatever our broad interests are. But for the most part, our research and our clinical lives are pretty separate. So if it were up to me, I would get every psychotic patient in Tallahassee and, all of the suicide cases. But they do, for the most part, kind of just go off the wait list, because the wait list is unfortunately really, really long right now. So kind of whoever's up next, which therapist has an opening, the person in charge of assigning the clients will kind of hand that over. But if there is always room for discussion, if there's a certain conflict of interest, of course, that won't be assigned. Or even if a certain therapist is struggling with their own type of mental illness, that maybe a certain client it wouldn't be beneficial for that client to have that therapist, that's always taken into account. And then if you get lucky, your interests, you can kind of sugarcoat or bribe that person a little bit.
So in your grad impact profile, when talking about your research, you said I research mechanism underlying suicidal thoughts and behaviors, particularly in psychosis population where suicide is catastrophically prevalent. Sorry. What do you mean by psychosis population?
So psychosis is kind of an umbrella term that refers to schizophrenia, really any sort of deviation from reality. And a lot of times that manifests in auditory hallucinations, so hearing things that aren't there, visual hallucinations, seeing things that aren't there. And then in addition to hallucinations, it can be any sort of delusion, which is thinking something, kind of fixed belief that something implausible is real. And that can manifest in, spiritual callings, or I believe I am of great importance. I believe I have a relationship with like a famous person. Really anything that's just not real is sort of characterized as psychosis.
Oh, that's fascinating.
A lot of people think that psychosis is sort of that typical or stereotypical, what we see in the movies, split personalities, having lots of different identities. That is a separate kind of construct in itself that we would address more as a trauma response, sort of dissociating, or maybe a personality issue, but that would be different from schizophrenia in itself.
So as you said, you sometimes you might struggle with your mental and emotional capacities, and because you study mental health, how important it is. So how do you take care of yourself when outside of your research, outside of your job? What do you do to take care of yourself?
Such another good question. So I'm a competitive CrossFit athlete. So I spend a lot of time, training in my gym. I also coach at my gym and work kind of my shifts there. So I do that for money, yes, but mostly because it is just the most amazing community. And when I need that escape from academia, everyone there is just such a bright essence. And then I have my own therapist. What's fascinating, and I've spoken about this pretty openly, is I am a chronically anxious person. I struggle from lots of my own mental health issues that just come with being human. And what's fascinating is I have and will continue to have clients who are both more anxious and less anxious than I am. And I feel fully equipped to help them. I feel fully equipped to provide them with all the right resources to help them. But when it's in your own mind, it's so different. So having my own therapist who, again, I could go through generalized anxiety modules and treatments with myself, but it's not the same. So that's how I take care of myself in order to then be able to get back to my clients.
Do you do anything else on the side, like cooking or I don't know, biking?
Mm-hmm. My friends are going to laugh at that question. I am notorious for being a horrible cook. Two of my best friends just started their own meal prep service. And I was like, ladies, you are saving me because I do not have time or desire to cook. But my cohort of students in my clinical psychology program is just, we got so lucky. There are 10 of us, and we are just wildly different people. All of us are so different from one another. And we just mesh perfectly. So tonight we're getting happy hour. I'm going to go, I have some research. I have a client this morning. Then I go straight to my gym, and then I get to hang out with my friends in my cohort after that. So a lot of just community building, I would say, I've done in Tallahassee. People always ask if I like Tallahassee, and as a city, I'll be honest, not so much. I came from DC, which I just loved DC, but I'm definitely the happiest I've been in my life here in Tallahassee because of the amazing people I've met.
Wow, this is great. Like, it sounds you have a really balanced life between, your school, your work, your physical activities, and your social life. Like,
right. Thank you.
How do you see yourself in 5 years from today?
So I really would like to fuse my interests in physical wellness and mental wellness. And so I see myself as a therapist for athletes. And I think I want to be able to strengthen my clients' minds and their bodies and, physically train them. So, get a personal training certificate, and then also be able to help them mentally, because you can't train one without training the other. You can't heal one without healing the other. And when one suffers, the other suffers as well. It's just impossible to think about mental and physical health as separate entities. They're so intertwined. So that's where I see myself. And I've found that my research niche has begun to shift as well, where I came with this really just stick with psychosis interest. That's what I'm going to do. R1 research career in schizophrenia. I'm starting now to even wean away from that and do more research in eating disorders, depression and anxiety, and high functioning athletes, these perfectionistic tendencies, because I'm sure that that's the population I'm going to be seeing in 5 years from now. So working on that now, just dipping my toes into the academic side of that. And then also working at my gym has been a really cool way to see, okay, do I like that environment? Yeah, I really like waking up, putting on my sneakers and going to the gym all day long, and talking to people. So it's like, how do I put all these together?
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. I've learned so much about the FSU clinics that everybody knows it exists, but who actually knows how it works.
Right? Yeah, I'm still learning.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you.